Hello, my name is Sasha Perigo, and I'm the Strategic Communications Manager for East Bay Housing Organizations. You're watching Winning Tenants' Rights Across Alameda County, a presentation of the In the Shadows of Eden report by East Bay Housing Organizations and My Eden Voice. This is the first ever survey of renters in the Eden area. We'll go over the methodology for that in a moment. Some of y'all may not be familiar with the Eden area. Despite the fact that this is a large area in Alameda County, it hasn't always been discussed in the housing justice conversations more broadly. That is likely because it is unincorporated. The Eden area is bordered by San Leandro to the north and Hayward to the south. And it's the urban unincorporated area of Alameda County. It includes Ashland, Cherryland, Castro Valley, Fairview, Hayward Acres, and San Lorenzo. And it has a population of 150,000 people, which is actually greater than the city of Berkeley. Here you can see the different communities, and that's San Leandro to the north and Hayward to the south. So the Eden area is actually home to the highest poverty rates in Alameda County. 18% of people are living below the poverty line in Ashland, Cherryland, and Hayward Acres. There's a higher percentage of Black, Indigenous, and people of color than anywhere else in the county, in the Eden area. And 50% of residents speak a language other than English at home in Cherryland, San Lorenzo, and Ashland. All of these demographic factors put someone at risk of being discriminated against in the housing market more generally and amplify the issues that we are seeing in this report. All right. So our report is called In the Shadows of Eden, Rising Rents, Evictions, and Substandard Living Conditions in Alameda County. A little bit of background about what this report is and why it was made. Eden area residents have complained about a worsening housing crisis for a long time. They've been asking the Board of Supervisors for tenant protections. The board received a grant from the Partnership for the Bay Area's Future that was administered with Community Partner Resources for Community Development to explore implementing several tenant protections. But unfortunately, this plan was stalled after the first three ordinances in the package failed on a second vote in February. In an effort to reignite this conversation, My Eden Voice conducted a survey of renters in the unincorporated area that we will go over today.
Thank you to Sasha, and thank you so much to the rest of the EBHO staff for co-hosting this really important first ever Eden area renter survey. So we're really excited. I'm going to take a quick second to talk about how we did this report. We asked over 25 questions via online survey. It was a bilingual survey, both available in English and Spanish, and we opened it for 2 months. We had a total of 118 render responses across all the 6 Eden area communities, and we went door to door talking to over 400 residents on behalf of My Eden Voice. And I'll pass it on over to my colleague Maria to help us go over what we found out in our key findings.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maria Miranda with My Voice, and we had 4 key findings come from this survey. The first one being that we saw that renters face widespread and severe habitability issues, which threatens the health of families, especially families with disability. Our second key finding is that rents in the Eden area are continuing to rise, not only leaving long-term residents in fear of losing their homes, but getting stuck in that perpetual fear, not being sure of the next place they will have the same issues. Another key finding we found is that when faced with verbal harassment, many tenants often self-evict instead of going through the process of either seeking legal aid or understanding their rights. Despite us having seen many stories, the survey really showed that experience was pretty common. And our last key finding is that families living in single-family homes are left out of protections from state regulations and also lack of enforcement overall of these state regulations. So those are key findings, and we are going to dive deeper into that in this presentation. Going back to that first key finding where we see that renters face widespread and severe habitability issues. Nearly 1/3 of respondents noted that they were dealing with an unmet repair at home, either broken water heater, garbage and rodents, lead paint exposure, leaks, or flooding at home. And this number easily rises to 40% when we acknowledge the consequence of these unmet repairs, which is mold. And this really threatens the health of our families since the Eden area already has the most dire health outcomes with the lowest life expectancies. And these are all documented to be in the county's unhealthiest census tracts. Additionally, we also see the limited ability for these tenants to contact code enforcement in the first place. Tenants often fear retaliation for reporting violations like a rent increase. Many tenants we have spoken to have reported having unmet repairs for months at a time, and in some cases, years. This is just a graph that shows more of the details of habitability issues we've seen. Garbage and rodents, leaks from toilet, faucet, and plumbing are some of the highest. These are some pictures that have been shared with us through our community leaders and some of our members. Thank you. I'm going to share a couple powerful quotes from the survey that were shared with us. Folks feeling like they have so many kids, they have a whole family, but they don't really have an option, or they've been told by the landlord that they will have to move out to make those repairs. So oftentimes it's used and held over their head before they can even speak up about it. Also, another quote we have here, mostly highlighting that despite consistent communication with the landlord about issues, those repairs don't get made and often ends up being a burden on the tenants rather than the landlord. Now, our second key finding, we do see that across the Bay Area, rents are rising. Specifically in the Eden area, we see long-term residents in fear of losing their homes. The threat of increasing rents is often related to eviction concerns, right? So tenants in the Eden area have seen their rents increase by 24% since 2020, which is an average of a yearly increase of 8.28%. And despite this being within the state law's limit, it still proves to be a large burden for families, especially those with disabilities. When asked further about this, 1 out of 4 tenants reported being concerned that they or someone in their community, neighbor, family will receive an eviction notice soon, primarily due to the inability to keep up with rent increases. With rental assistance programs dwindling and dialing back their services, we see that tenants are often forced to either pick up a second or third job to make ends meet, or in some cases will even self-evict. And so I will now pass it to my colleague Julio, who will speak a little bit further about that.
Thank you, Maria. So my name is Julio Contreras. I grew up in the Cherryland and Hayward area. I'm currently living in South Hayward, and I'm a community organizer with My Eden Voice. So the third key finding that we have is that when faced with verbal harassment, many tenants self-evict. So over 100 people that we spoke to and that turned in the survey voluntarily ended their lease early. This oftentimes happens after landlords verbally harass or threaten tenants with eviction, and often to no fault of the tenant themselves. This is oftentimes something that we hear when speaking to people who might be undocumented, might have that power balance the landlord is abusing. And so this option of self-eviction is one that they oftentimes take versus pursuing legal causes because of not being at fault. There are several consequences if tenants get an eviction pinned on their records. This includes an incriminating legal trail of eviction, credit score penalties, as well as reprisal from the landlord or housing agency. So this exceeds far beyond that initial eviction. It affects their entire lives afterwards. Another key finding that we found is that families that are living in single-family homes are falling through the cracks of state regulation. They are oftentimes not protected or very weakly protected. A lot of landlords and even politicians oftentimes claim that AB 1482 is the new law and it's protecting everyone. And while it does provide some benefits, like a statewide rent cap of 5%, it does not cover most single-family homes and condominiums. So we found that single-family homes were the ones that responded with the most fear and concern of being evicted, and they are not included. AB 1482 leaves out over 5,000 rental units in the Eden area, home to upwards of 10,000 families, and represent 1/3 of the Eden renters. They are also the second most likely to live with families. Around 79% live with families. Single-family home renters may be at more risk of housing insecurity and displacement because of that. as shown in these survey results here. Out of all respondents, single-family home renters were most likely concerned about receiving an eviction notice. Close to half also fear that another rent increase will occur and that they won't be able to afford it. So that instability and that stress of another rent increase that is going to push them off and cause them to have to move or be homeless. And so next, I would like to pass on the mic to some tenants that we work with that have been able to collect these stories and tenants that feel comfortable with sharing their situation. And so I'll pass it over to Nancy.
We are really lucky to be able to hear from Nancy Vargas and Vicky Vivaldo today, who will be sharing some stories from tenants directly impacted by this issue. Nancy and Vicky will be speaking in Spanish, so for the next portion of this video, we will be playing the original Spanish audio with English subtitles. Thank you.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Nancy Vargas. Soy capitana comunitaria en el área no incorporada. Cada semana escucho historias de inquilinos sobre sus situaciones de vivienda y discuto cuáles son sus mayores temores. Me gustaría compartir con ustedes hoy. Sara, residente del Ashland, madre soltera, ha estado alquilando una unidad durante 4 años. Ella, al igual que muchos en todo el condado, todavía se recupera de los efectos de la pandemia. Desafortunadamente, Sara se ha atrasado en el alquiler durante la pandemia por 9 meses y no solicitó asistencia de alquiler a tiempo. A pesar de eso, ha tratado de hacer pagos después de la moratoria y el propietario se ha negado a aceptarlos. Sara incluso ha aceptado establecer un plan de pago con el propietario, pero han ignorado la sugerencia. Además de esto, la unidad de Sara necesita reparaciones importantes debido a malas tuberías e inundaciones. Ella ha reportado múltiples inundaciones en su apartamento. El techo de la habitación de su hijo se derrumbó, lo que permitió más inundaciones durante la temporada de lluvia. Y usar su lavamanos o ducha puede causar que la unidad de su vecino de abajo se inunde. La unidad de su vecina está siendo remodelada, mientras la suya continúa sentada, con el daño de las inundaciones. Dado que el propietario dejó de aceptar pagos, el temor de Sara es que se use como una razón para desalojarla. De esta manera, puede hacer reparaciones y proceder a aumentar el alquiler actual de $2,275. Casos como el de Sara muestran la importancia de incluir el derecho a regresar junto con el derecho a volver al mismo alquiler en las ordenanzas de causa justa. Sara no tiene ninguna garantía de que no terminará sin hogar a pesar de tratar de comunicarse y llegar a un acuerdo con el propietario. Ella está esperando que le llegue una orden de citación judicial en cualquier momento dentro de la próxima semana. Mientras tanto, se está preparando para que su hijo regrese a la escuela. Este no es el único tipo de historia que se ha compartido con nosotros. A continuación, escucharemos otra historia que destacará por el miedo al desalojo que prevalece en nuestra comunidad, especialmente cuando las reparaciones deben ser completadas. Les quiero pasar a mi compañera Vicky Vivaldo. Muchas gracias.
Sí, aló, ¿me escuchan?
Sí, escuchamos.
Ok, buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Victoria Vivaldo y soy un residente de Cherryland como capitán comunitario en el área no incorporada. No solo he escuchado historias sino que también he visto las condiciones en las que muchas familias se ven obligadas a vivir, mientras continúan recibiendo aumentos de alquiler y en este caso ilegales. Valeria es un residente de Ashland y ha estado viviendo en una unidad durante más de 5 años, con sus 3 hijos y su esposo. El otoño pasado, Valeria recibió informar a su manager y a la propiedad con aviso por escrito, informándole sobre el moho o escalera dañada, o problemas en la vivienda, plomería en la unidad. No tuvo respuesta al respecto. En cambio, recibió un aumento de alquiler del 16% en represalia. Valeria y su familia se están recuperando inmediatamente por tener que pagar. Ellos ahora tienen que pagar $300 adicionales en el alquiler, especialmente cuando no había reconocimiento en las solicitudes de reparación que había hecho anteriormente. A pesar de esto, siguieron haciendo sus pagos de alquiler, e incluso si llegan 1 o 2 días más tarde. Y sin embargo, ha pasado casi un año desde que esas solicitudes de reparación se hicieron sin comunicación del propietario. Sus vecinos también han reportado múltiples problemas similares a los de Valeria. Según nuestros informes, a las familias como la de Valeria forman parte de las 4 de cada 10 inquilinos que están preocupados por los problemas de habitabilidad y sus impactos en la salud. A pesar de que tanto Valeria como Sara fueron remitidas a asistencia legal para recibir guía y apoyo en sus casos, y si el propietario continúa sin responder, limita su capacidad de ayudar. Es por eso que, que es introducir un registro de alquileres donde los propietarios puedan ser identificados y contactados adecuadamente por sus inquilinos para informar inquietudes. Valeria y Sara también corren un alto riesgo de desplazamiento si el lenguaje del derecho al retorno no se incluye en causa justa. Esto va dirigido a los supervisores, especialmente a los del área no incorporada. ¿Dónde están los supervisores que los representan, que dijeron ayudar a las necesidades de la comunidad? Han estado algunos por más de 20 años y aún no hay soluciones. ¿Cuánto más esperará Sara y Valeria para, para tener una vivienda digna sin problemas y para hablar más de nuestras recomendaciones, le paso la voz a Leo. Adelante, Leo. Gracias.
Thank you so much for sharing those powerful stories. And Leo, co-director of My Eden Voice, is going to share some of our policy recommendations that came out of this report.
Hi again, co-director of My Eden Voice. Thank you to Nancy Vargas and Vicky Vivaldo, really for sharing a lot of the on-the-ground stories for us today. I'm going to go over our 5 policy recommendations that really address these issues. We've just talked about some of our key findings, which dealt with habitability, the threats of housing instability in the area, and how single-family homes are in a really precarious situation, right? Our recommendations build upon the years of working in this area. My Eden Voice was previously involved in other stakeholder groups that the county had led in previous efforts, so it does still mirror that call. My first recommendation I would like to go over is the need for a proactive rental inspection. Last year, the county did pass a pilot rental inspection program in response to AB 838, which is frankly a complaint-based model. The complaint-based model empowers the county. Once they get a call, then they will go and see the conditions of the house. I think that is a step forward, but at the same time, it doesn't address the documented fear of the landlord retaliation on the tenant. That was one of the root causes when we were first studying this issue. People just are not confident of their rights once they make that call and are not assured of what's going to happen, right? So we see a proactive rental inspection that has regularly scheduled inspections or has different moments where you trigger a time when an inspection occur where you're not relying on a tenant complaint. You're actually holding better standards for healthy living standards throughout the communities. And we've seen this practice throughout many jurisdictions in California. So we believe that would both address the tenant concerns of habitability and keeps quality housing stock without the retaliation. To address the fear of tenant retaliation, we also need to look at local just cause. We see this hand in hand as a package. These are components that are directly related to each other. We really need to look at local just cause expanding, or what would it take to expand to those who are not currently covered with state AB 1482 protections, especially when we call out, single family home renters, right, who are what we're finding the most precarious position, most in fear of one, receiving a increased rent at the same time, who also have ongoing habitability issues, right? Just cause is the ability to receive a reason for an eviction, right? That you are not withheld to a no-cause eviction just because, a landlord just doesn't like you one day. So we believe single-family homes need to be part of that equation. At the same time, our newer multi-unit renters within 15 years also had not been covered. So I think understanding how AB 1482 was a floor of tenant rights is very important. I'm going to go over legal aid and education. Over half of renters report when asked, they don't know their rights when it comes to receiving an eviction notice, right? And it's really hard understanding for the everyday lay person what tenant law in your locale, let alone what tenant law in California is with the changing policies, lifting the moratorium. So what we find is constant legal education amidst different changing policy needs to happen all the time to ensure that our tenants stay housed. When we studied this back in 2019, many people didn't know to reach out to legal aid until it's too late, right? Until there's a threat of eviction that has already been in the process, right? People already arriving at the emergency. And in terms of equity, there have been few legal service providers designated specifically for the Eden area. It's a relatively newer phenomenon, and we definitely welcome as many legal providers that have the capacity, but very few are specifically funded to serve specifically the Eden area. And that's structural too, because most of our county programs are more of a county-wide focus, and it really takes a lot of advocacy to make sure residents as big as the size of Berkeley are being able to be serviced. Unfortunately, legal aid had a sustained vote from the board earlier this year, and that also caused a lot of delays understanding what the current legal aid capacity is. I'll go to the next slide. This next one is probably one of the top three when we first started studying the issue was the need for rent stabilization. I just wanted to highlight how the situation had become, it's still fragile with regarding to working families and rent. As we talked about, the 5% plus CPI rent cap can be upwards legally to 9 to like 11%, depending on inflation. And folks are finding that's still too high to afford. And we're finding that cities like Hayward, Antioch, Concord have all taken the steps to pass stronger rent stabilization. Since we first started studying the issue, the question is, how come Eden area is left out of these updated protections that are being addressed throughout the whole Bay Area region as a whole? Additionally, what we're finding is there is not much administrative support to even enforce a rent stabilization law unless you take it up to a nonprofit mediation or the courts. So other cities pursued a rent board. Alameda County, currently the unincorporated, does not have a rent board to even have a center place where tenants and landlords can come together and arbitrate a rent increase. The rent registry, I wanted to echo, this has been in conversations as part of the package as well. We find that this solution really addresses just having a transparent communication between ownership and residents. What we're finding out is tenants don't know who their landlord is, as Vicky mentioned earlier. And sometimes property management might not be saying the same thing as the landlord, or the landlord is not even aware of some of the rent increases that has happened. Establishing a rent registry is good practice to encourage transparency and at the same time put agencies in a position to make better policy once you can track the trends of what you're dealing with, right? So rent registry is super critical in creating a better system for the Eden area. That wraps up our main policy recommendations out of this report for now, and I'll pass it over back to Sasha.
So with that, we'll conclude this webinar. I want to thank My Eden Voice and all of the members of Eden Renters United who were on the ground canvassing, conducting this survey, and doing this important work, and letting EBHO join the cause, help edit, and put this report together. We're grateful to be working with you. For more information, you can reach out to Leo at leo@myedenvoice.org. Press can reach out to me at sasha@evho.org.
My Eden Voice is launching a week of action, so it can be an exciting week for us. And if people want to support in letter writing campaigns or our upcoming rally, we will send you information. My Eden Voice has been invited to a stakeholder meeting hosted by Supervisor Miley. So we welcome all the support. If you feel like something needs to be done differently in the Eden area, please contact me. And I also want to acknowledge Sasha and the whole crew at EBHO, as well as we had a data intern, Stephen Peck, half of San Jose State University, will help data analysis as well as my colleagues, Maria and Julio. Thank you, everyone.